Quarterback. Everybody wants to talk about Spencer Petras and the problems Iowa has in developing its QBs. But what about that offensive line? What happened to being bullies of the Big Ten? We'll talk about the myth that is Iowa's youth up front and why that's not an excuse for the problems in the run game and in pass protection. But first, let's get to our sponsor. First of all, how about Iowa Floor Covering? This company has been supporting this show here for the last month or so with their Tough Core Click Together 4.5 millimeter waterproof vinyl flooring. It's being sold right now at $269 per square foot from IFC. You can access this and find more information on the company at www.iowafloorcovering.com/DIY. Now, this is a deal with self-installation only. But boy, it's a way better deal than anything you'll find in any of the major box stores. Again, visit iowafloorcovering.com/DIY. This local company, this family-owned company located right in the heart of central Iowa down in Bondurant. All right, what happened to Iowa's vaunted offensive lines? Everyone wants to talk about quarterback and why Spencer Petras is the problem, or Iowa's issues developing quarterbacks. I would tend to agree with the latter, that Iowa has an inherent issue with developing quarterbacks. But this is a valid question, right? Iowa used to be considered by many to be the bullies of the Big Ten, and you may say, well, that hasn't been the case for decades, and you'd be right. But even under Kirk Ferentz, there have been years where Iowa has dominated on that side of the football. It wasn't that long ago that Iowa had a Joe Moore Award winning offensive line in 2016. Now, I don't believe, personally, if you go back to watch that 2016 season, I don't think that offensive line was quite as good as maybe the award would make you think it was. However, there were some major pieces from that line that ended up being still really good NFL players down to this day. So what happened? Where did this all go wrong? So many people, especially the coaches, will have you believe that it's due to youth up front. Well, we're young across the board. Guys, they take time to, develop and be brought up to speed in the Big Ten Conference. Certainly, strength and conditioning is a big part of that. And you hear different theories tossed around as to why Iowa has struggled to run the football, specifically with creating a push up front, and then, of course, protecting the pocket and protecting whoever the passer is. In this case, the last 3 years, it's been primarily Spencer Petras. Here's the issue, folks, with blaming the youth. All right, and this is obvious, but sometimes we forget this. Why is there so much youth being called upon right now? Why aren't there 4th, 5th, and 6th year guys who are these seasoned guys up front? Because you look at the best lines in the Big Ten, typically at Wisconsin, at Minnesota, even at Ohio State in some cases, you have guys who are 4th, 5th, and now, because of the COVID year that some players have taken, 6th year guys who are fully developed and are anchoring a very veteran offensive line. So to see an Iowa team that's rotating primarily freshmen, sophomores, that is somewhat odd. But here's where things went wrong, folks. Go back to 2017, 2018 season. We're going to actually start at 2018, and we're going to look at every player that Iowa has brought in as an offensive line recruit and see what happened. And this will tell you that Iowa has an issue not only with development right now up front, but also with attrition via the transfer portal and other reasons. Let's get to 2018. We start with Tyler Linderbaum. Let's remember this. Tyler Linderbaum is an NFL player right now. He's going to be a star in the league with the Ravens. We're not going to count him in this because of this. Even though he was developed, I give Iowa tremendous credit for being able to see him as a center and being able to make that move and helping to develop him into an NFL talent. And there's no disputing the fact that Iowa has done great things under Kirk Ferentz in developing individual linemen to be really good NFL players. We have a laundry list of examples, but Tyler Linderbaum was recruited as a defensive tackle, so we're not going to use him for this discussion. But 3-star Jeffrey Jenkins was recruited as an offensive lineman. Whatever happened to Jeffrey Jenkins? Well, he walked away from football in the year 2020. So that's why he's not contributing. Of course, if he were still here, he could potentially be a 5th-year senior. How about Jack Plum? We know he's still on the team. He was a 3-star back in that 18 class. He's no longer playing significant snaps. Now, is he playing? Yes. I don't believe injuries are an issue for him right now. Didn't play very well last year. And again, he's not playing well enough to beat out a bunch of guys who Kirk has repeatedly labeled as inexperienced. So what does that say about the development of Jack Plum? Now, you want to blame the tree, or do you want to blame the fruit, so to speak? I'm not placing the majority of the blame on either, but I'm just simply stating a fact that Jack Plum apparently has not been developed to a point where he can anchor down and be the veteran that they could use right now. Man, he's the most experienced guy right now on that offensive line, not playing significant snaps. 2019, how about 4-star Ezra Miller? He transferred to Nebraska, did not play a ton at Nebraska last year. Not sure if he's even gotten into games this year. Perhaps he has. I think he is on the 2 deep. But the point is, there's attrition for Iowa. He was a 4-star coming here, never saw the field. He was actually considered widely to be a top 25 offensive tackle recruit in the country. Never worked out here. I believe he fought some injury issues. He heads to Nebraska. 4-star Tyler Andrus, another highly touted kid from down in Norwalk. I don't think he's ever seen the field. He's still here, folks. He's a 4-star offensive lineman who's still here. So, let's do the math here. 19, 20, 21, 22. He's been in the program. This is year 4. Year 4 for Tyler Andrus. Not blaming him. Some of these situations, I don't know all the details on these guys, what injuries they've faced. Certainly injuries are a part of football, especially when you're talking about offensive linemen. But the fact of the matter is, Tyler Andrus was widely considered to be a 4-star recruit. He has never played at Iowa. How about 3-star Noah Fenske, also a part of the 2019 class? Fenske never really sees much of the field. I think he played a little bit in 2020, but he ends up transferring to Colorado. So Fenske, yet another recruit, a prospect from the 19 class that has just not panned out here. Justin Britt, another guy Iowa brought in 19, kid from Indianapolis. Looked like maybe he was coming along in 2020, which we thought the offensive line as a whole was coming along in 2020. Not sure how much that was smoke and mirrors given the state of the conference and the COVID season and whatnot. But he was a guy who was playing better, but he's dealt with a ton of injuries. I'm not going to place a ton of blame on Justin Britt. I feel sorry for Justin Britt because, boy, they could really use him this year. Now, would he be giving them a huge boost? We don't know, but he was part of that 19 class, and he is out right now. Another guy who was part of the 19 class, Cody Ince. He walked away from football prior to this season. Yet another guy who should be here right now as a veteran anchoring down this offensive line. And for whatever reason, and that's his business, he decided to walk away from football. Let's move to the year 2020. Logan Jones, who is the starting center, young, inexperienced. He was not recruited as an offensive lineman. He was recruited as a D tackle. So we won't bring him into the mix here. But 3-star Tyler Ellsbury was a part of that 2020 class. So do the math there. This is his 3rd year as well. He is right now part of the rotation, apparently has not secured one of those guard spots. But with my limited knowledge of the offensive line, I thought he played pretty well in those first 3 weeks of the year. A bright spot in a unit as a whole that was struggling and is still struggling. But again, Ellsbury was part of that 2020 class, and he's a rotation guy right now. How about 3-star Josh Volk? This is his 3rd year. He was part of that 2020 class. He is not playing. So where's Josh Volk? I don't have an answer for you. Mason Richmond, we know, is part of the 2020 class. He's probably Iowa's best lineman right now. I know a lot of people want to say it's Connor Colby. I think Richmond's probably playing better than anybody. He is their left tackle, and as far as starts are concerned, he's had, 20 starts or so in his career. He was part of the 2020 class. A couple other notes. Kyler Schott was a guy. Back in 2017, he was a guy who they brought in, and he earned his way. I believe he was a walk-on to start his career, earned his way as a rotational guy, and by some metrics was maybe Iowa's best performing lineman, not named Tyler Linderbaum last year. He chose to leave and compete for a spot in the league. I don't believe he's even on a practice squad. He could have been back for year 6. So I don't know why that is, why he didn't choose to come back. And that's, again, certainly his business, but he could potentially still be here, and he's not. Another guy that we should bring up, Mark Kallenberger, was part of the 2017 class. All right, he took a red shirt, and then he played during 2020, which wouldn't have counted. So he could feasibly be back here for 2022. He walked away from football. Do you want to blame Seth Wallace for some of the accusations of Seth kind of bullying his younger brother, Mark's younger brother, Jack? I think that's fair. I'm not saying that's the reason Mark. I mean, Mark's the only guy who can really say for a certainty why he chose to walk away from football. But certainly with some of the stories that we've heard about Seth Wallace and how he treated Jack Kallenberger, one would have to think that may have played into his decision. But he could be a sixth-year senior, and boy, they could use his experience. And he played really well in 2020 as well. Those are the stories, folks. You can interpret it how you want. How I would sum this all up is Iowa has an issue right now with holding on to linemen. They have lost, again, counting guys who either walked away from football or transferred away from the program. Jeffrey Jenkins 1, Ezra Miller 2, Noah Fenske 3, Mark Kallenberger 4, and Cody Ince 5. All right, that's 5 guys in 4 classes. Now you may say, well, that's not much. Well, I think that's fairly significant from one position group, and a position group that Iowa is known for developing really well. I think that's significant, and that I'm not saying it excuses the issues right now, because then you have to ask yourself, why are these things happening? Why are guys leaving? Why are guys transferring? Those are all valid questions. What happened since 2016 that has caused this? People want to blame George Barnett, the offensive line coach. He has only been here. This is year 2 for Barnett. All right, so some people will actually think that the offensive line was in great shape under Polasek. The offensive line struggled in 19. Go back and watch that 19 offensive line. And yes, it was good in 20, the COVID year. But in 19, they struggled. They had some super seniors in 19. I won't name who they were. You, if you're an Iowa fan and you follow Iowa football as close as I do, you probably know who those interior linemen were. Those guys had not developed the way Iowa needed them to be developed. And so that 2019 line was bad at times, really bad at times. So I struggle to blame George Barnett, and you can look at it both ways. Either you say Barnett should be doing more, and so he's the problem, and you say, look, at the end of the year, he's done after year 2, or you say, look, we need to give this guy more time because he was inheriting a mess that Tim Polasek left behind. You have a right to your opinion. Interpret this information, this data, however you want to interpret it. The other factor in all this is Chris Doyle was relieved of his duties prior to the 2020 season. Now, again, they had some issues even leading up to that year in 2019 with Chris Doyle still on the staff. So you solely placed it on Chris Doyle? I don't think so, but that is a factor, potentially is a factor. I know he spent most of his time working with that offensive line as it relates to strength and conditioning. I believe he was a former offensive lineman back in the day. So that's a factor. And of course, Kirk Ferentz is considered to be an offensive line guru. And so is Iowa's offensive coordinator. I mean, he's a former center, Brian Ferentz is. So you can blame a lot of different parts here, but the point is something is not working right now. And yes, they had success with Tyler Linderbaum. You got to give them credit for that. They have dealt with some injuries, and guys like Justin Britt, and I know Cody Ince, before he walked away from football, dealt with some injuries. I'm sure Josh Volk, I've heard that he's been dealing with injuries. David Cobb is part of the 21 class, who's not even with the team right now due to some health condition, according to Kirk Ferentz. So those are all factors. But the point is, it's way too easy to just say black and white. Look, the line is young. Why is it young? Because older guys have either A, not stepped up, or B, not been ready to step up because they haven't been developed by their coaches. So again, you come to the conclusion based on the information, and hopefully we'll see a change in development here soon, because if Iowa can't run the football, if they can't protect a statuesque quarterback, which is Spencer Petras, the offense has no chance to really make any significant improvements. I am not wearing a scarlet-colored tie for any significant reason, so I have not been converted to the dark side for this coming game against Ohio State. I had another event prior to recording this video, but Iowa, Ohio State, of course, on Saturday, post-game to follow. Tonight, if you're watching this on Wednesday, we'll have Hawkeye Hangout, live edition of Hawkeye Hangout featuring your phone calls and special guest appearance from Coach Don Patterson as he gets us prepped for Iowa, Ohio State. Hawkeye Hangout live Wednesday, 9 p.m. Central Time, right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm.